show sponsored by the Office of Champagne USA, asking you to join the growing movement of consumers demanding truth in labeling in wine. Go to www.champagne.us to sign the petition.
When Ruinart was founded as the first champagne house in 1729, champagne was a still wine. And it was, a discovery as a coincidence that champagne became a sparkling wine. And one element important there is that at the time, from one year to another, there were great differences in terms of not only quality of the harvest and of the wines, but also quantity. So people at the time learned that by blending wines from different years, they could get wine to sell every year. It's very hard this year to say if it's going to be vintage or not. That's impossible to tell at this stage. It's often the case. It's still a very, very early harvest. We started, late August. This is only the fourth time since 1822, I think. There are some years where that the harvest is incredibly good. The numbers look fantastic, like 96, 1990, 89, 88, 2002, for instance. Some as well that you are not going to make a vintage right away. 94, 2001 are some of the recent examples. And I think they realized this way, that by blending wines from different harvests, they could also make a consistent style, a consistent wine. And that's why today, Champagne mostly makes non-vintage wines. The particularity of the House of Ruinart is that most of our wines are based on Chardonnay, and quite a lot of them entirely on Chardonnay, which, as you know, is the least planted variety in Champagne, with about 27-28%. So it is probably the most difficult to source. Chardonnay is the variety that in Champagne gives the elegance, the freshness. When it comes from the best areas, there's also the element of length and creaminess that is, I think, quite specific to the Chardonnay, because there's no structure as opposed to Pinot Noir. And in the best years, we craft this wine, the Dom Ruinart, which is, as you can expect from prestige cuvée, only Grand Cru. And I think this is one of the key when you want to make champagne that needs to age, 6, 7, 8, even 10 years for this one. Grand Cru, or at least Premier Cru, but Grand Cru preferably, are the grapes of choice to get the longevity. Even though we don't maybe speak so much about terroir in Champagne, you don't see it on the label often, but it's a key element. When you make a prestige cuvée like the Dom Ruinart, you work with the best terroir. You blend some of them, so it's maybe less obvious than with Burgundy or Piemonte, for instance. But the terroir is still quite important. And with more than 300 years of history of growing grapes, we know exactly where the best locations are. This takes, decades and decades and decades to really be able to pinpoint what the best areas are. And in Sillery and other villages around, like Puisieux, like even Verzenay, there is a little bit of Chardonnay in that area, in the northern part of La Montagne de Reims, that are quite different from the Chardonnay from the Côte des Blancs. Those are more mineral, they're very flory, they have a lot of elegance, when the Chardonnay from La Montagne de Reims have a bit more depth and have a bit more body in a way, without being Pinot Noir, but they have a bit more volume than the Chardonnay from La Montagne de Reims. And we really play with those two origins to make the Dom Ruinart. Well, vintage champagne is special to us because we don't make it every year, as opposed to different regions. And then, as a cellarmaster point of view, it is where we have maybe more room for creativity. With the non-vintage, you have to make it the same, very same, year after year. So it's like, it's fun because the challenge is really to get the consistency. But in a way, you're creative in a different way. With the vintage, you have more creation potential in a way, because you want to express the house style and you want to express the vintage style. This is the current release, 96, which was a vintage very different from 07 in terms of weather, with a lot of sunshine, high acidity and high maturity together. But it starts to show some typical elements of both the Chardonnay and the maturation, because what strikes me first is the minerality of this wine. I think it's very stony, very mineral, like, almost like a pebble on the first note. And then you have a hint of development. You start to have a bit of toasted bread. It's going into that, toasty, not quite smoky yet, but probably going there in the future. When you do a tasting of old vintages, you do a vertical tasting, there's always a surprise because the bottles, they're all a bit different. They all have their own personality because they're fermented and then they age, they're differently. It's not like a bottling where it's really all the same. Those are developed sometimes a slight difference. So especially when you come with an older vintage, and here they've been, of course, stored the best way you can think of. It's dark cellars, fairly high humidity, cool temperature, maybe about 50 Fahrenheit. So the aging conditions are perfect. So you can see sometimes a slight difference. And personally, I really enjoy champagne that have a bit of aging. I think they develop more complexity, and the wine aspect in them is a bit more obvious than the bubbles. And I really like that. The second wine, 93, less declared by houses, 93, but quite a good year for Chardonnay. We had a bit of rain actually during the harvest. I remember that. It was a great year for porcini mushroom, 93. But after the harvest, which is a good sign. If it's a good year for porcini mushrooms before the harvest, it's a bad sign. But when it's after the harvest, it's okay. And here, I think you really start to have a Chardonnay that reaches its peak, where you have on top of the mineral elements, here you have more of that bready, dried fruit, like hazelnuts, almonds, pistachio, that are really coming up. And this is, to me, the sign of both the maturity of the champagne and the Chardonnay, and the flavors from a fairly ripe Chardonnay. It is a Chardonnay-based rosé, because we use the Dom Ruinart blend with 100% Chardonnay, to which we add, depending on the year, anywhere from around 15%, but up to 18% of red wine that comes from, again, the northern side of La Montagne de Reims, so Verzenay and Verzy mostly. So it's not boozy or ailly, it's not those big red wines, but more delicate. Again, what we try to do with the Dom Ruinart Rosé is still find the Chardonnay behind the Pinot Noir. You get that, of course, Pinot Noir profile on the nose, but the palate is very creamy, very soft. You don't feel the tannins. You get the flavors of the Pinot Noir without the texture, really. And I think this is really what we try to achieve on this wine. The role of a cellarmaster in a champagne house is really to make sure that the style and the quality is there. So it needs to maintain the consistency and the style of the house. It's quite a responsibility because I carry almost 300 years of history. So it's not a small responsibility. There are so many loyal fans of Ruinart throughout the world, and they of course want the quality to remain the same, if not even better. So my job as a cellarmaster is to make sure that I make these people happy.